Hey friends, tonight I'm going to tell you a true crime story, gently. You're here with me, and you can almost feel the cool edge of night sliding across your shoulders as the room settles. Out beyond your window, a streetlight hums. In your mind, it sketches a small American town where the sidewalks roll up early and the cafe chalkboard still promises pie by the slice. A case is like a knot. You think tight, stubborn, but not impossible. And I'm going to guide you through it, slowly, so your breathing can stay soft and your eyes can grow heavy if they want to. So before you get cozy, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is for you. I love picturing the map of all of us, little pinpricks of light. Now, turn off the lights, switch on a fan for that soft noise, and let's begin tonight's journey together. You step onto Main Street in Harbor Glen, a coastal town tucked against Oregon's ragged edge, the kind of place where wind chimes tinkle on porches and gulls bark when the bakery opens at dawn. The air smells faintly of salt and coffee. Your shoes make that hollow, comforting tap against weathered boards as you pass a row of storefronts painted cheerful colors. You're not a cop, not a reporter, just you, listening, piecing, letting the town unspool in your hands like a long thread. People watch you pass with that small-town gaze, curious, polite, practiced. Tonight's story is their story, and whether they admit it or not, they've rehearsed it for years. You stop in front of the hardware store, the kind with a bell that rings when you enter and pegboard walls lined with paintbrushes pointing like compass needles. A faded white pickup is parked out front, and someone has set a vase of daisies on the hood, a gesture that looks gentle but trembles with shock. Because last week, after years of whispers and dead ends and Sunday prayers, a man from this very store was let out in handcuffs. An arrest that rattled every coffee cup in Harbor Glen. An arrest that nobody here can say out loud without licking their lips first, like the word itself might burn. You push open the door, and the bell gives a tired little note. Inside is sawdust and lemon oil, the crisp scent of cardboard that's been neatly sliced with box cutters. You walk the aisle with the blue tarp rolls and the twine spools, and the rows of screws sorted into tiny bins labeled with tidy labels that almost make your heart slow. This is a place built on fixing things, on jammed latches and leaky sinks. And yet, 27 years ago, on a June night in 1998, something in Harbor Glen broke in a way that no one could fix. Her name was Elena Park. You picture her not as a headline, but as a moment. A barista tucking hair behind her ear, the espresso machine sighing, a loose silver bracelet clinking when she wiped the counter. That evening, she locked up the cafe early to meet a friend, and the fog came in low like a careful hand. She had a canvas tote slung over her shoulder, paperback and sweater inside, and she cut across the parking lot behind the hardware store because in Harbor Glen, that was just the sort of shortcut everyone took. She didn't make it to the friend. She didn't make it home. The search lasted for 2 weeks, then 2 months, then 2 seasons, and by Christmas, they were lighting candles in paper bags, lining them along the harbor, the light wobbling in the dark like breath. You step back out into the night, and the wind has picked up. It makes the flag outside the post office snap, the sound like someone shaking a rug. A woman with a grocery bag pauses to tell you, soft voice, little smile that doesn't quite hold, that the man they arrested was good with kids, that he ran the hardware store's free Fix-It Saturdays, and that he taught scouts how to sand wood smooth without raising the grain. He's the last person you want to suspect, which is precisely why the ground shifted when the cuffs clicked. In a small town, roles are armor. Take the armor off, and all you see is skin. You keep walking, and you pass the cafe where Elena worked. It's still there. Same pale green walls, newer espresso machine. Someone has taped a black and white photograph near the register. Elena laughing, her eyes half closed, like something surprised her. They don't lock the picture up. It just lives there among the tip jars and scone crumbs and the chalk doodles drawn by bored kids. One of those doodles is of a lighthouse with a smiley face. A child has given it eyelashes. It's a strange little detail to notice, but towns are made of these odd edges. A smiling lighthouse, a free bin of mismatched screws, and a seashell wind chime with one shard missing. A truth to hold as you move. The National DNA Database, known as CODIS, rolled out to state laboratories in 1998, the very year Elena disappeared. Science was moving forward. But in Harbor Glen, the fog was too thick, the technology was too new, the samples were too poor, and the timing was wrong. You note that and let it settle. It's not flashy, but it matters. The case wasn't a failure of caring. It was a failure of tools. You step onto the pier because you want the shape of the water under your feet. Boards creak. Rope rubs. Somewhere a buoy clanks. The sound hollow and patient. You think about how people tried to help, how the high school civics class made missing flyers on a dot matrix printer that banded the ink like a sunset. How a retired biology teacher organized a meal rota for Elena's family, insisting we keep people fed and we keep people warm. The biology teacher, this is another odd Harbor Glen detail, once drove the school's mascot suit, a giant sea otter with surprising calves, in the 4th of July parade. He waved with both paws. Children screamed. It was obvious, and silly, and human. And you're not sure why you remember it, except that everything sticks when a mystery leaves a hole. You can feel the town wanting you to blink first. It doesn't want to be watched. It doesn't want to be recorded. But you keep going gently, because that's the only way through. In 2018, across the country, investigators made history using forensic genetic genealogy to identify the man dubbed the Golden State Killer. That technique, cross-referencing crime scene DNA with open-source genealogy databases, changed the weather. You register that, too. A historic hinge the whole nation heard. Harbor Glen heard it as if through a wall. It would take years before any hinge squeaked in this town. You duck into the library. The night librarian. Cardigan. Corduroy shoes. The steady kindness of someone who has helped teenagers print essays at 8:57 p. M nods to you. You run a finger along the local history shelf. Shipwrecks, cannery strikes, and a pamphlet about the time the mayor cut the ribbon for a new playground and the scissors didn't work. In the microfilm drawer, a yellowed headline. Town rallies after disappearance. There's a photograph of a search line across the dunes. People spaced like stitches. You can hear the soft sough of the sea oats, the quiet rallying cry of a community that, at that time, believed everything lost could surely be found. But it wasn't. Days swelled into years. People married and divorced. The bakery changed ownership twice. The Fishermen's Cooperative became a gallery that sells watercolor postcards of the very pier where you're standing, where Elena once stood. Every few years, a new police chief promised a review. Every few years, Elena's mother wrote a letter to the editor, urging anyone with a memory, even a sideways one, to come forward. Eyewitnesses had seen shadows, reflections, and a man in a brown jacket. But here's a knot that scholars still argue over. How long does memory stay reliable, and does recall damage it or strengthen it? Some cognitive scientists caution that every retelling edits the file, while others say that retrieval practice, guided carefully, can stabilize details. You hold that debate in your palm like a coin, turning it. Harbor Glen turned it too. And then with a grace that looks like luck, but isn't, someone boxed up the evidence for a new round of testing. Not a news crew, not a miracle, just a tech in a lab coat, a standardized method, a contamination protocol stricter than the last, and an algorithm honed on datasets that didn't exist in 1998. The mist shifted. An allele that once looked like noise now hummed a clear note. It wasn't a match. Not exactly. Genealogy rarely is. It was a cousin line, a family branch, a surname that rhymed like a clue in a children's riddle. The map of relatedness pointed toward Harbor Glen's well-liked hardware man. The same man who had offered discounts on space heaters during a cold snap. The same man who'd shown scouts how to sand along the grain. You close the microfilm drawer with a muffled slide and look up at the clock. The second hand ticks. The librarian is stamping due dates. Outside, the buoy keeps clanking. When you step back onto Main, there's a hush that feels less like peace and more like a breath held between teeth. You pause in front of the hardware store window. In the reflection, you can see yourself and the sidewalk. And layered on both, a poster for the town's summer festival. Funnel cake, fireworks, and the sea otter mascot who surely has new calves by now. The poster corners curl in humidity, reluctant to let go of the glass. You turn the handle and walk into the hardware store one last time. If you reach out, you can almost feel the giveaway texture of glossy sample cards, the sweet metallic tang of a freshly opened paint can, and the smooth chill of a new lock in its package. You think about locks and keys, about doors that were never meant to open again. An arrest has been made. The bell rang. The cuffs closed. The community is stunned because the suspect's face is threaded through their photo albums, standing at potlucks, at graduations, and at the ribbon cutting where the scissors finally worked. If you listen carefully, you can hear the town trying to decide what it believes. Maybe it believes in science. Maybe it believes in the long patience of small towns. Maybe it believes in something else, that kindness and danger don't live on different streets. Whatever it decides, you'll be here with it, step by soft step. You are not here to judge. You're here to hold the lantern. There's a final oddity that sticks with you as you close up Act 1 in your mind. Harbor Glen's antique shop keeps a fiberglass muffler man, one of those giant roadside statues, in the back room. He's missing his head. Children dare each other to look at him through the cracked door, and the owner says the head's somewhere in a storage unit upriver, but they haven't found it yet. Maybe that's not important. Or maybe it is, because this town has a way of misplacing pieces and carrying on with the rest. You stand at the threshold, the bell quiet, the aisle still. Outside, the wind leans in. You take a slow breath. You're ready to cross into the next chamber of the story, where promises meet proof, and the water grows deeper. But your voice stays low, the kind of low that lulls, the kind that keeps nightmares at bay. For now, you step back into the salt air, your hand sliding along the railing as if to memorize the grain. The night takes you in, and the town, uneasy but listening, takes one small step closer to whatever truth it can bear. You drift with the town into the week after the arrest, moving the way you'd wade into cold water, slow, careful, noticing each inch of change on your skin. Mornings start the same, with gulls and garage doors and the smell of drip coffee, but everything is an octave lower. On Monday, you walk by the elementary school and hear the flag rope clacking against the pole, that small metal heartbeat, and you realize the children are whispering instead of shouting. On Tuesday, the hardware store windows are brown papered, the kind of paper that tears with a papery sigh if you look at it too long. By Wednesday, the church ladies have placed a casserole on the suspect's porch, cream of mushroom, peas, the ritual kindness that doesn't know what to do with itself. A kindness that avoids eye contact with science and sorrow, both. You move like a listener through all of it. You pause where the gossip gathers at the post office boxes that click open in little choruses, at the laundromat where warm air puffs out with the clean fragrance of cotton and coin, and at the pier where the bait bucket smells like old pennies. You notice how people speak in half sentences now. I always thought he was trailing off. She told me once that he drifting, maybe the police, dissolving in the damp air. You're not here to finish their lines, only to hold them, to let them land. At noon, the county releases the probable cause affidavit. You sit in your car with the windows cracked and the fan on low, the paper's pages rattling softly like a moth trying to escape. The affidavit is careful and measured. It explains how, months ago, a new sweep of the old evidence isolated a partial profile that led to a family tree, and how warrant work quiet and methodical followed. The part that makes the hair on your arms lift is so ordinary you could miss it. The detectives waited outside the suspect's house with takeaway coffee and patience until he tossed a coffee cup in a public bin. Then they retrieved it, double-gloved, sealed it, and logged the chain of custody with times precise enough to make your breath slow. Later, a lab reached the conclusion that made hands shake across town. You breathe. You let the words be just words, for now. You think about another truth that steadies the floor under you. In 2013, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in Maryland v. King that police may collect DNA from arrestees charged with serious crimes, aligning DNA collection with fingerprinting during booking. It doesn't solve anything all by itself here, but it explains the river that runs underneath these cases and how policy changes shape what investigators can compare, when, and how fast. It's not cinematic, it's procedural. And in a case that has lived in myth for decades, the procedural is what lets you keep your voice soft and your heartbeat from sprinting. You go for a walk because your body needs it. The afternoon has that pearly Oregon cast, the sky a bowl of skimming light. You find yourself on the promenade beside the harbor, where tourists in fleece vests take pictures of boats with names painted in hopeful fonts. Second Chance, True North, Elena. That last one makes something in your throat go tight. You stand there a minute and feel the weather move across your face, a coolness like a hand that isn't trying to fix or pry, just to comfort. To your left, a dog shakes off seawater, and an arc of droplets catches the light, like confetti, one of those small, unnecessary joys that manages to show up anyway. Inside the police station, the lobby smells like disinfectant and coffee. You sit in a gray chair meant to be neutral and wait your turn to ask questions like a regular person, not a detective, not a reporter. The front desk officer recognizes you from the cafe. This is Harbor Glen, after all, and he speaks in the exact tone you've been using. Gentle, but grounded. You ask about process, about patience, about what comes next. He explains that an arrest is a threshold, not a finale. He talks about the DA's review, discovery, and motions. He says the word arraignment with the kind of practiced calm that fits neatly into the quiet of this room. He does not say closure. You respect him for that. While you wait, a teenager comes in to ask about a lost bicycle. He has a lanyard around his neck with a key that taps against his chest when he moves. And you realize sudden and sweet that the world is still moving in all its ordinary ways. Out on the sidewalk, a truck goes by, thumping bass a little too loud, and the officer smiles at you like, "See, the normal refuses to be canceled." You file that away as an anchor you can tie to later when the currents pick up. Back outside, you wander toward the old cannery district. The buildings are brick and harbor stained, with graffiti tucked like ferns into the cracks. A mural of salmon swims across one wall, stylized scales reflecting blue, green, and something a little like hope. You duck into a small heritage museum, the kind lovingly maintained by volunteers who know every object's story and dust them with reverence. A docent tells you about the 1936 Tillamook burn, how hot winds carried embers across miles, and how communities across Western Oregon learned the hard way to plan for fire as much as for rain. You hold that historical truth like a matched note to the one you're already carrying. Communities build memory through disaster, but that memory is both an archive and a mirror. It tells you what happened, and it shows you who you are. You also gather oddities, because Harbor Glen offers them up even now. At the museum, there's a glass case with a collection of old motel, no vacancy signs, and one of them flickers in a pattern that shouldn't be possible because it isn't plugged in. Probably residual charge, the docent jokes, but he looks at it like you look at a dream you can't quite shake. Later, you pass a barber shop where the barber insists on whistling Sweet Caroline at 3 p.m. Exactly. Every day. Because routine calms the mind. You make a note of it, not because it's crucial to the case, but because these side doors are how you and the town Step away from the heaviness long enough to carry it again. Evenings bring the community meetings. You sit on a folding chair in the high school gym where banners rustle and the floor gleams so cleanly you can almost see yourself. The chief stands at a podium with a paper cup of water and speaks in paragraphs, thanking the state lab, acknowledging the family, and reminding everyone that charges are allegations until proven. The DA steps forward, clarifies the date of the next hearing, and instructs the public not to discuss specific evidence on social media. Then a woman raises her hand and asks what's on many faces. How could this be someone we knew? You feel the whole room tilt with that question. You watch the chief manage a hush and then answer with a kind of humble geometry. He draws an invisible triangle in the air. Opportunity, means, motive. He says motive can be the murkiest. He says that patterns are sometimes visible only from a distance that we don't have until time gives it to us. He says that it is possible to be beloved in one setting and dangerous in another, and that the overlap is not a contradiction, but an awful reminder that humans are multitudes. You breathe with everyone else. It helps that he doesn't pretend to certainty. It hurts, too. A teacher asks about witness memory and whether it can still help. You sense the room leaning forward because this is the piece that belongs to them, the part where citizens might still do something good. You explain in the quiet voice you've owned all night that researchers still disagree on the best conditions for late recall. Some advocate for cognitive interviews that recreate sensory context without planting suggestions, while others warn that repeated recollection erodes accuracy like a shoreline worn by waves. You let the question stay open because that's what it is, an open, ongoing argument in the academy, one whose outcome matters in rooms like this. Afterward, in the parking lot, a teenager skateboards in slow S-curves under the streetlight. His wheels glint, a hypnotic little pulse, and his hoodie flaps like a tame wing. You stand with a circle of neighbors you've met and not met. Somebody says they feel guilty for being surprised. Somebody else says they're not surprised at all and feel guilty for that. You touch your sleeve with your fingers, grounding yourself in texture, the weave, the little catches. You follow the group's breathing and let your own fall in line. When you finally go home, the night wraps around you like a wool blanket that smells a bit like salt and wood smoke. You make tea. Steam fogs the window. Sitting there, you think about ethical questions that now run parallel to the case whether anyone wants them or not. Should law enforcement use consumer genealogy databases when users haven't consented explicitly? Or does public safety outweigh those expectations of privacy? Some scholars frame it as a spectrum between individual autonomy and communal protection, and the country hasn't settled on a single point along it. You don't have to solve it tonight. You just have to acknowledge that the question lives here, in this town. As surely as the tide table posted at the bait shop, sleep doesn't come easy. You thumb through a journal where you store scraps and textures and the kinds of details that feel like glints on the water. You write about Elena's bracelet, the clink you can almost hear if you tilt your memory right. You write about the coffee cup, the chain of custody form, and the double gloves. You write about the church ladies, and the barber and the dog shaking itself into a momentary galaxy. Then you write a sentence you didn't expect. I am not afraid of the truth being complicated. You don't know if that's for you, or for Harbor Glen, or for the hallway where the suspect will be walked past cameras that try to flatten everything into a single frame. Maybe it's for all of them. In the days that follow, the town keeps offering you pieces. The librarian mentions that Elena had been helping a regular learn to read, using a book of lighthouses, which is why the chalk-drawn lighthouse near the cafe has eyelashes. The kid who drew it thought lighthouses watch the sea like people watch each other. The biology teacher, the one with the otter suit calves, sends you a photocopy of a field trip permission slip from 1997, where Elena, as a high school senior, wrote in big, looped letters that she couldn't wait to see the tide pools. It doesn't give you evidence. It gives you a person. You visit Elena's mother, invited gently by a mutual friend who knows your voice doesn't push. The house is tidy, the kind of tidy that feels like a discipline against chaos. On the mantle, framed photos, birthdays, a prom shot, a picture of Elena and her mom on a ferry, hair blown wild, both of them laughing with their eyes closed against the wind. Her mother pours tea and asks you for something impossible. Tell me what it's like to breathe after this. You don't answer right away. You let the kettle tick as it cools. Finally, you say that breathing after is the same as breathing before, except you notice it more. That noticing is tiring at first. Then it is a kind of prayer. You don't ask her about the arrest. You don't say the suspect's name. You ask her what Elena loved. She tells you about notebooks filled with tiny sketches of boats, about a phase where she tried to make every food into a sandwich, and about a winter when she knitted scarves with holes in them because she never learned to bind off. You sit a while, in the gentle avalanche of those details. When you leave, she hands you a small thing without ceremony, a paper star Elena, made from a strip of magazine. It's light as breath. You carry it like you'd carry a seashell, carefully, in your palm, where your lifelines look like they were drawn for this. By the next week, you notice that people are saying, "We," even more than they used to. "We will show up for court," they say. "We will listen. We will be kind to each other's shock." That's a strange little detail, too, and a strong one. A town's pronouns are weather vanes. You let yourself believe in the way this one turns. Still, the story keeps asking you to keep two ideas in your hands without letting either drop. The first, the evidence may be solid. Science may be strong. A courtroom exists to test it, not to bless it. The second, the town's feelings are not evidence. They will still press hard like a palm on a bruise. You practice holding both. You practice saying sentences like, "We wait. We trust the process. We refuse to turn people into cartoons." You spend an afternoon with an old yearbook. The pages smell like glue and time, and the margins host inside jokes no one can decode anymore. You find the suspect posing with the shop class, grinning in a sea of teenagers with goofy haircuts and earnest eyes. You understand why this arrest feels like a counterfeit bill slipped into a roll of small-town currency. People keep checking every dollar now, holding it up to the light, hoping to see the watermark that says real, real, real. You don't mock it. You do the same thing sometimes. You also let yourself wander into an odd corner you almost skip, the headless muffler man statue in the antique shop back room. Today, the owner is polishing a chipped ceramic rooster with a diligence that would make anyone a believer in second chances. He leads you to the back and nudges the door with his hip. The giant fiberglass body stands there, headless, arms flexed as if holding an eternal imaginary wrench. The owner chuckles and tells you he finally opened the storage unit upriver. The head wasn't there. Instead, he found a box of road maps from the 1,970 seconds, all marked with tiny pencil stars. "You want 'em?" he asks. You shake your head, and you both laugh at the absurdity. But when you leave, you realize what the headless man really gave you. A reminder that not every missing piece can be found by looking harder. Some gaps are structural. We walk around them, we brace for them, and life goes on in the room anyway. Court day arrives like a low tide, everything exposed and a little cold. You stand outside the courthouse with townspeople who hold their coffee cups with both hands. Reporters drive in from the city and practice their stand-ups on the sidewalk, their voices a touch too bright for this gray morning. When the suspect is let in, he looks smaller, the way anyone looks when framed by the heavy geometry of law. You don't reach for outrage or pity. You keep your breath, even. You listen when the judge speaks. The words like stones placed in a line. Rights, counsel, charges, date. You feel the grammar of the state settle over the room, and, strangely, it comforts you, not because you worship it, but because language is how we keep from drowning when the ocean insists on being the ocean. After the hearing, you walk to the water. You stand where the pier meets the angle of the shore and look out at the gray-green that has been keeping its promises for longer than any person in this town has been alive. A cormorant surfaces, holding a silver fish that kicks once, twice, then stills. The bird swallows. The horizon does what horizons do, holds a line. You let your thoughts go slack for a minute. A rope dipped into the brine. When you pull it up, it's wet and heavier, but still yours. You return to the cafe. The chalkboard has a new drawing. That lighthouse again. Eyelashes and all. But now there's a little boat below it, and inside the boat, a stick figure holding a lantern. Someone wrote "us" under the boat. It's silly and beautiful and exactly right. You order something warm. The barista, new since Elena's time, hands you the cup with both hands, a half bow of tenderness that doesn't feel performative. You take the first sip and let heat pool in your chest. You end the day the way you began it, walking. Your shoes find the rhythm of Harbor Glen's boards and sidewalks and earthen shoulders. The town exhales, then inhales, then does it again. You match it, breath for breath, step for step, trusting that if you listen closely enough, the town will tell you what it needs next. Maybe that is patience. Maybe presence. Maybe just the soft discipline of staying. You're good at staying. You've made a life out of it. Before you sleep, you light a tiny candle, the kind that comes in a 10-pack from the dollar store and smells faintly of vanilla. Its flame shivers and then steadies. You put Elena's paper star beside it and watch how small things can be bright. You say goodnight to the day out loud, because sometimes it helps to hear yourself be gentle. Then you close your eyes and let the hush come in waves, each one smoothing the shore a little more, leaving you just ready enough to step into what tomorrow asks, voice low, lantern high, feet warm on the boards that hold. The days stretch on, like the tide, slow, deliberate, unending. You start to understand that the aftermath of truth isn't a bang, it's a hum. Harbor Glen hums differently now. Not quieter, not louder, just tuned to a lower note. You wake early, before the gulls begin their racket, and walk down the fog-damp streets. Each house still has its porch light on, and for a moment, the town looks like it's trying to guide itself home. You pass by the harbor, watching a fisherman unload nets heavy with kelp instead of fish. He curses softly, then laughs. It's the laugh of someone who's known the sea long enough to forgive it. That's something this place is learning again. Forgiveness without forgetting. The hardware store stays shuttered, brown paper curling at the edges, a kind of quiet monument to everything that broke and everything that might still be fixed. You turn inland, toward the courthouse. Trials move slowly here, weeks pass, before anything major happens. You sit in the back row of the courtroom, where the air always smells faintly of paper and dust and something like tension. The defendant's lawyer speaks calmly, almost clinically, about circumstantial evidence, about databases, and about the ethics of genetic genealogy. Across from him, the prosecutor lays out timelines with the precision of someone who knows every pause counts. The jury listens, faces impassive, but you can tell their hearts are doing the hard work of holding both fear and compassion. That's what truth does. It refuses to be tidy. During recess, you step into the hallway where the vending machine hums beside the water fountain. A reporter asks if you're local. You nod, but don't elaborate. She says, "You all seem calm." You smile. The kind of smile that says, calm and silence are not the same. In Harbor Glen, silence is how we process the noise. Outside, you meet the biology teacher again. He's older, slower, and still wearing the same plaid shirt that has become his uniform of witness. He tells you something strange, that the sea otter mascot suit was finally retired last month. Too heavy, he says, smiling faintly. And maybe we don't need to hide behind it anymore. You don't tell him how poetic that sounds. but you feel the truth of it, like a shell pressed to your ear. The trial continues. Experts testify about partial profiles, about probability ratios that make your brain hum with math you haven't used since high school. Somewhere in there, you hear it. 1 in 5.6 billion. The odds that two unrelated people could share the same genetic markers. You think about how numbers can sound cold, but still carry heat. Because behind every statistic, there's a heartbeat, a memory, a mother waiting with tea gone cold. In the evenings, Harbor Glen gathers again. Not in the gym this time, but in smaller places, porches, diners, the park overlooking the marina. People talk softly, and the conversations have shifted from who to how. How did this happen? How did we miss it? How do we move forward? Nobody mentions closure anymore. They talk about understanding, about learning, about mending. You listen to a man quote his grandmother, "Justice isn't a finish line. It's a kind of walking." You nod. You've been walking all along. You spend one night at the lighthouse, the real one this time, not the chalk drawing. It's still functional, though mostly automatic now. A volunteer guide unlocks the gate and lets you climb the spiral staircase, your hand sliding along the cool iron rail. Halfway up, the walls sweat with salt and time. When you reach the top, the lantern room hums like a living thing. The beam swings out into the fog, slow and sure, cutting through what you can't see. You think about Elena. You think about the night she vanished, about how somewhere this very light was turning. Maybe she saw it. Maybe she didn't. You realize that even if she didn't, it was still there flashing faithfully into the dark. That's what Harbor Glen has always done, you think. It keeps shining, even when no one's looking. You return to town at dawn. The streets are wet, shining like glass. A delivery truck rumbles past the bakery, and for a heartbeat, the smell of fresh bread hits you so suddenly, it almost feels holy. Life, despite everything, insists on being ordinary. You sit on a bench and let the steam from your coffee blur your reflection in the cafe window. Inside, the lighthouse doodle remains, though now someone has drawn little waves below it. You can't help but smile. Weeks later, the verdict comes. Guilty. The word echoes through Harbor Glen like a dropped stone, rippling outward, touching everyone and everything. Some cry. Some don't. Some stare at their hands as if seeing them for the first time. You stand outside, watching as the courthouse doors open and people pour into the sunlight. It feels lighter than you expected. Not triumphant, just relieved. The truth has a way of settling in the lungs, like fresh air after rain. Elena's mother walks out, surrounded by quiet respect. She looks older than the last time you saw her, but her gaze is steady. Reporters swarm, but she shakes her head gently, declining words. Instead, she holds a small photo of her daughter and says, softly but clearly, "We remember her in full color." Then she turns away, and somehow that's enough. You walk the pier again that night. The sea is calm, the sky a slate brushed with silver. Lanterns bob along the dock for a memorial, their light drifting across the water like whispered promises. You kneel and set your own candle afloat. The flame trembles, then steadies, and you whisper not a prayer, not a demand, just gratitude that the story, however heavy, has found its voice. Somewhere behind you, laughter rings out, a child chasing a stray balloon, a dog barking, a gull stealing a fry. Life continues, unbothered by the weight of memory. You breathe deeply, tasting the salt on your lips, and you realize the town has changed, yes, but not broken. It bends like driftwood, smooth from the years, strong in its softness. And as the night deepens, you walk home slowly, footsteps soft against the boards, the wind whispering through the pines like a secret half-remembered. The light from the lighthouse sweeps the horizon one last time, tracing the line between loss and healing. You stop, close your eyes, and let the sound of waves erase the noise in your head. The hum of Harbor Glen, steady again, wraps around you like a lullaby. Maybe someday we'll know the truth, but for now, sleep well. The tide drifts in with a hush, and you let your breathing match it. In, out. The air smells of salt, of pine sap, of rain that hasn't yet fallen. You sit by the window, the glass cool under your fingertips, watching the horizon fade from silver to ink. Somewhere, a foghorn calls low, patient, and soothing. You don't need to solve anything tonight. You've done enough. The town has done enough. You imagine the lights of Harbor Glen twinkling from house to house, tiny constellations strung along the earth. Each one a story, each one a sigh. The sea hums its endless lullaby, and you let it carry you. The creak of wood, the hum of the fridge, the faint tap of the clock, all of it folds together into something that feels safe, familiar, and whole. You picture Elena's paper star, again, small, weightless, and perfectly folded. You imagine it floating through the dark, unbothered by gravity, drifting toward the beam of the lighthouse, spinning gently in its glow. The world keeps turning. The night keeps softening. The mystery, like fog, thins just enough for moonlight to slip through. You let go. You let the hum take you. Maybe someday we'll know the truth. But for now, sleep well.